Have you ever asked yourself what exactly is leadership? There's so many shades to leadership. Today, I want to take you on a journey to really discover or possibly rediscover definitions of leadership. Today, we're going to look in the brief, or at least we will do a high level overview of leadership from the perspective of the science of leadership, the theory of leadership, and the practice of leadership. And of course, we will do a deep dive into this concept so as to ensure that moving forward, you have a better, clearer idea in terms of how to deploy leadership in your business and in your life. Today, to join me with this conversation, I have a team of dynamic personalities that will support me in the conversation. So, I want to first of all welcome Clement Frank, and he is a leader by certification. He is an economist, and he is about to release his new book. And I know that he has a wealth of knowledge on leadership. I also have Shivani Sinarang. And Sinarang, she's a project management practitioner. And the whole essence of project management in of itself, it really helps leaders to better identify with tools that can help them to attain predictable outcome with their projects. So of course, Shivani will talk to us about leadership from the perspective of project management. We also have Peter Goscott, and he is a theologist by profession. He's an entrepreneur and so much more. And of course, he will help us to see leadership from a theological standpoint. Team, I want to welcome each and every one of you today. I trust that you guys had a fantastic weekend.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it was good. It was good.
I know that Peter is smiling a little bit more. His face does look a little bit more fatter this morning because he had a fatter pocket. I guess you know, you know. All right, guys. Always great to be with you guys. Today we are looking at a pretty interesting topic, and very often when we talk about leadership, to the average person listening in, it leaves a lot to be desired because there's so many shades to leadership. What we have done to help our community to better relate to leadership, we have coined our own term, which we call the proactive leader. And that's a simple term. I mean, in leadership, you don't want to be in the reactionary mode. You want to know that you can proact. But what does it mean to be a proactive leader? It means three things. It means that you have trained the mind to think ahead. It means that you have trained the mind to see beyond problems. And it means that you have trained the mind to be able to take informed action. Now, what does all of this means in the context of leadership? Once time permit today, I will go deep into this to help the audience to better understand because as we look at proactive leadership, we are looking at leadership from several different standpoints. We are asking ourselves, what is the science of thinking ahead? Because, of course, we have now developed the program, the science of success. So everything that we do, we always look at it from an evidence-based standpoint. What is the science of thinking ahead? What is the science of seeing beyond problem? And what is the science of informed action? Once time permits, I will do a deep dive into this to really help you to understand leadership from a scientific standpoint. Once you get past this, we then move into concepts like what is the theory of leadership and what is the practice of leadership. You see, very often when we use leadership, sometimes we use a blanket term. But what I've found is that when you're able to put leadership in its respective context, it makes it much easier for the listening audience to interpret what you're saying. And because they are stand a better chance to interpret, they stand a better chance to apply concepts, which will then allow you in your organization to get better results. So, with that being said, I'm excited to open up the floor for some conversation. I want to turn to Frank to share with us his thoughts on leadership and the importance of leadership. When I
Mhm.
come back, what I will do, I will look at the science of leadership and what exactly it really means. Frank, all to you, my friend.
Hi, morning team. So good seeing you guys this morning. Um, when we look at habits that are essential, I and especially for leaders, we yearn to see leaders who will take their place in society, leaders who come to the table with a change of the status quo, leaders who will cause their team to rise successful and to lead their team into success. The role of business leaders or business development leaders, leaders of whole, is challenging at the same time vital because these professionals they foster growth, they steer companies towards new opportunities and they forge valuable partnerships. So as the business landscape evolves, so too do the expectations placed upon these leaders and also on their teams. I looked at the Forbes Business Development Council, and their members share the habits that they wish more of their employees would cultivate. From the art of proactive networking to the discipline of strategic thinking, these habits not only enhance individual prowess, but also foster cohesive and forward thinking culture, and a team culture that is. And the first essential habit, they say, is to go above and beyond. So, what it's saying is that you do more than what's asked. It can be challenging to separate yourself from the competition when it comes to successful business development. Doing more than what's asked from your coworkers, from the clients, and prospects, that will immediately separate you from the pack and make you invaluable. So next time you're crafting a response, think to yourself, and I'm quoting Daniel Biagini, an American equity investment life insurance company, said, "What's one more thing I could add that this person might need?" Foster trust with managing up is another habit. At any stage of one's career, managing up is a skill that can benefit all employees. Managing up is a way for employees to foster better relationships and increase trust with managers, which then supports short term success for the team and long term career development or advancement. While developing these skills can take time, the benefits managing up can bring a worthy effort for employees to develop, according to Javier Molina of Starburst. Develop a sense of situational awareness, and we're looking at what Arjun Dhingra from All Western Mortgage said. He said, to develop situational awareness, too much of the work culture in the US is framed around tasks, punch lists, and blanket statements and approaches. So, being so general and robotic in how we do our work, but more importantly, in how we deal with others, is what causes poor consumer experiences and ultimately causes brand to fail. Learning to read people and listen more will allow us to better connect and serve. Be independent and persevere. Our behavior, I should say, one behavior I really admire is independent perseverance in the face of a challenge. And to be sure, asking for help is certainly a skill and it's key the career growth. But taking that first steps on your own, that's equally important. I really should appreciate when my team member would approach me, not only with a question, but with a list of steps that they've already taken to try and solve their problem on their own. Number five, seek a more personalized human approach. I would love my team to have an old is gold mentality of picking up the phone more often to prospects, to customers, and internal stakeholders instead of the idea that only emails and social media sells, which is often a more comfortable and more accessible approach for employees. Drive a personalized human approach toward consistency in delivering goals. And lastly, for now, take personal accountability. You need to run the account like it is their own business. And this ensures accountability, but also keeps the individual creative, finding ways to be inventive and think outside the box on ways to connect with others. When the app, when the rep, when the representative acts like their name is on the door, they make decisions based on what is best for the overall health of the business. Thanks, Gary.
All right, great share, Frank. I now want to, today we are looking at essential leadership habits. And of course, I know everyone will bring their own perspectives, and that's quite okay. I will now ask Shivani to chime in terms of what do you see as essential leadership habits, perhaps in project management or in any other areas that you are dealing with. Shivani, all to you.
Thanks, Gary, and morning again to all. Now, in terms of leadership, yes, it's a habit. I do believe that it is a habit that we need to practice. You could only get a habit with practice in it. But before I start the conversation, well, actually, I want to start the conversation by saying, you have to ensure that you get the right habit, because imagine you form a habit in leadership, Frank, as you know, and it is the wrong habit. And then you can just keep going and going and going with the wrong habit. So you did say situational, and everything is situational as well. So we don't want to use the same way over and over. You have to analyze what will work in your project and in your organization. Now, in project management, we can manage projects the agile way, right? And the agile way says that you do not wait for the entire plan before you execute, right? So that's what I wanted to start with, by understanding the agile way of how you manage projects, which is you're not waiting for the entire plan before you execute. Now, part of the agile family is Scrum, SCRUM, the Scrum way. And you will manage a lot of technology projects using the Scrum way. Now, what is Scrum? Scrum is part of the Agile family, as we said. These are the two popular roles in the Scrum: the product owner and the Scrum Master. The product owner and the Scrum Master. Now, the role of the Scrum Master is to practice servant leadership. Servant leadership. And this is what we want to talk about more: the practice of servant leadership in project management, if you are using now the Scrum way of doing projects, planning and executing projects. Now, the Scrum Master, if this is a methodology that you're following, now you have to understand if it is the correct methodology that you're following. The Scrum Master is the person to practice servant leadership. A servant leadership is, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not saying move the cup from here to there. I am simply guiding you in how you can make the best decision. You are facilitating the process. Now, I would have heard, sometimes depending on the culture, sometimes depending on the environment, somebody might say, but Shivani, your pay grade higher than mine. You're supposed to tell me, you are the boss, you're supposed to tell me what to do. But as I tell persons, if you are practicing servant leadership, we understand what we have to do, right? We understand what we have to do, which is part of the product backlog. It I sit down now to decide is how we going to do it. You're going to tell me how you're going to do it because you are the SME, and I am there to guide you to ensure that we find effective ways to complete the product. So servant leadership is a skill. It is something that you have to practice because think about it. We are not people that are like that. We are people that will tell you, hey, it's time to do this. Let's do this. Right? So servant leadership is definitely a habit that you have to learn. It takes time. I would say it takes time. Some people will be very good at it as in everything, just natural. But the purpose of servant leadership is to guide. And the example that I was given is from a project management point using the Scrum way of managing projects. The Scrum Master is a role that will practice servant leadership. You are not telling them, hey, build the house this way. You are guiding. You are simply guiding. You are helping the product owner in this case to find effective ways to manage the product so that by the time 1 year finishes, if you're building the house for 6 months, you get the house that you want. Yeah, so servant leadership. And there's so much to talk about servant leadership, but I'll stop here for now and come back. Thanks, Gary.
All right. Those were some good points. The Scrum method, and servant-driven leadership. I do believe that learning the habits, I believe, can help uh, rising stars in business a lot. But Peter, just before I come to you, um, I want to just say a couple of things. I do believe it's one of the habits that you need to form as a leader, essential habits to have, is the habit of thinking ahead. The habit of thinking ahead. To be able to think ahead, it means two things. You have the information to guide the process, or you're able to research that data. And third, I want to add a third one, that you perhaps have the right support community around you that can aid in the whole process of thinking ahead. I will give a few examples to this just after Peter, what the process of thinking ahead is, and how to also view the entire process of thinking ahead in terms of the scientific benefits. Peter, all to you.
Good morning. Good morning. It's a wonderful day to be a part of God's creation. It is always good to be here as well to be, encouraging and empowering our community concerned what it is that we all as human beings contributing to the human experience. And from our perspective, when we look at developing habits that will add value to our lives as we share, in this sphere, that we are all engaging. One of the habits that we think about in leadership, one habit that we think about, and we think about it from the perspective of what we call the master plan technique. And with our master plan technique, we have a simple process by which we engage the community by just saying that every individual, all of us, we have a story to be told. We have a story to be told. We have a character that we must mold. Our habits to understand. You have a solution, a solution uh, into the marketplace to bring individuals, to uplift individuals. But as a leader in particularly, we want to develop a kind of leadership that will serve humanity. So we have to work on our character. So the one focus that we can have, what I want to bring to the table this morning is character development. And we can look at character development from two concepts. One, we can look at character from the concept of your life story. And we can look at character from the process of your developing your morality. Um, as we speak into your morality, we do understand that every individual, we are impacting the world on a day by day basis, and how we operate, how we live, how we project ourselves is what people are seeing. What we do habitually is forming or it is etching in us certain characteristics that we are known by. So we have to be clear. We have to be clear in terms of how do we want to impact our marketplace? How do we want to impact our community? How do we want to be seen? Because we are developing character, whether we know it or not. And in the area of we're talking about habits, what is habit? Habit is just those little things that we do habitually or over and over and over, that they say what happens every habit over time, it becomes a character. It becomes your characteristic. It becomes what you are known by. So we have to be intentional about what is the character that we are focusing on developing. So with that in mind, we have to be now intentional. So we're developing our morality because we want individuals to see that we are upright citizens of society. But what we also want to empower individual is in your intentionality, you treat your character as you're in a development in as you are developing your character, treat it as how a author or a movie script writer would design a story. So now you're going to look at yourself in terms of the story of your life and how you are going to craft your character in such a way by which over time you are communicating a message in such a way where people will understand who you are, your mission, your mandates, your motives. People will begin to tap into there are certain traits about you because intentionally you decide that this is what individuals need to see and this is the impact that you want to leave on your world. So our master plan technique, we are encouraging individuals to write your story, but to write your story by becoming as a leader, to become the hero. You want to define yourself as the hero in your story because there is somebody that is depending on you. And most people do not see themselves as a hero, but yes, you are a hero to your child. You are a hero to your family. You are a hero to those individuals that you listen to. And every individual has something that they are in need of. And I do believe that every individual was placed on the planet to solve a particular problem. So, in understanding what your problem is, you want to be the hero, the knight in shining armor, the knight in shining armor, or is there a knightess? Do we have knightess? But whatever it is, whether it is a female knight or a male knight, you want to be that hero who is engaging the marketplace, engaging your world, engaging your small world. Yes, we tend a lot of times individual don't play who they are based upon the comparisons that they see in the wider world. But we want you to understand that as you engage your community, there is a small community that is seeing you, and the intentionality that you do have is to engage your small community in such a way whereby people are seeing your intentionality and you are making a master, you are creating mastery around your subject matter, you are creating a sense of strength, of character that will impact and influence your community. So this is what we want you to do. See yourself. How do you see yourself? And how do you formulate building how you see yourself and how your community see yourself, and form that character and work that character on a day-by-day basis.
All right. Thanks for your share, Peter. A lot was said and a lot to unpack. I want to begin by expanding on the concept of the proactive leader. One of the essential things that you learn about proactive leadership is the process of thinking ahead. And I do believe that forming this habit of thinking ahead is vital for any leader. And I'm going to give you a number of reasons why. Thinking ahead, first of all, allows you to get clarity of the process that you should be using to achieve the targeted performance outcome. Thinking ahead helps you to clearly identify what is it that you want to achieve, what you want to achieve, and how to achieve it. It also helps you to look for data to guide your steps. And largely because you're doing all of this, the end results means that you may have a blueprint for success. So thinking ahead really allows all of this to happen when you apply the process in the right way. Now, let's look at an example. You have two persons and working for your company, and what you do, you ask each of them to set up a US based business. So, what one does is to begin by doing the research to really identify the best way to set up a US based business in the right way. And the other one, they just start moving through the process. So, the one that is doing the research and collecting the information, he decides now to connect with someone that understands the process. For example, he learned that to set up a US based business properly, and these are things you need to think ahead about, because if you're not thinking ahead about it, you can't budget properly for it. You need to register with the Secretary of State. So you recognize that's one step. You need to get your ITIN, that's step 2. You need to get your EIN, step 3. You need to get your DUNS number, step 4. You need to be listed with the 411, that's 5. You need to have your SIC code. So largely because one of the employees took the time to understand the entire ecosystem of setting up a US base properly, it allows several things to happen. One, it boosts their confidence in getting the job done. And these tools really help leaders to get clarity. Can you imagine you're a leader, you're placed into a leadership position, but you don't have clarity of what you're doing. You don't have clarity about the end results. What happens? So thinking ahead, where it's like you put yourself in that position of strength like a project manager. Because all project managers, they are trained to think ahead. They're going to think about the project completion criteria. That's thinking ahead. They're going to think about the project start date. That's thinking ahead. They're going to think about the project end date. That's thinking ahead. They're going to be thinking about the project cost. That's thinking ahead. So thinking ahead as a proactive leader, it is an essential habit to form, and it's your ability to execute on this properly that can really set you up for success. Now, as we go into the science of thinking ahead, there's a number of things that we see. One, it helps to reduce the stress of the project execution, because you're not like the individual who's like fish out of water trying to get the task done. Because you have think ahead, You are now in a better position of strength to identify a step by step process to achieve a specific end result. So, that in of itself reduces your stress level. Thinking ahead enables you to identify the solutions. Thinking ahead helps you to possibly reduce the cost of the project execution. Thinking ahead enables you to enhance your targeted performance outcome. Thinking ahead enables you to enhance predictable outcome. Thinking ahead helps you to get better control over your processes. So, thinking ahead it is an essential leadership habit to form when you want to be successful in executing any process. Now, we see that many persons want to be successful in business, but what does it take to be successful in business? As we go deeper into this program, you will really learn what is the science of success. The science of success really examine best practices, successful tools that can position you for success. It's going to be another saying take action. We're saying that you should take guided action. You should have the information. And this is just one of the habits that I want to share with you today, and that's the habit of thinking ahead. We know that sometimes when you think ahead, you see a lot of problems also. So another element of proactive leadership is the process of thinking, the process of seeing beyond problems. And what does the science says about this? Now, I do believe that anyone that is training the mind, this is a habit. It's a habit. You're going to execute on a project. Do you make an emotional decision and you just start that process? Or do you pause a bit? Do you ask yourself, what is this project? What is my outcome? What is the best way to achieve my objective? Are you thinking ahead about this? What is the human resource that I need, the technical resource that I need, the capital resource that I need? Sometimes the reason that you're going to fail is because you're not clear, you're not thinking ahead. Your process of thinking ahead is not well developed. And when that happens, it compromises the project outcome. So I'm going to pause here for now. I trust that you would have had some nuggets there. And I'm going to turn to Frank. Frank, all to you. You're mute.
Thank you. I'll
Welcome.
continue on some of the essential habits for leadership. The second one to one look at is combat the imposter phenomenon. The imposter phenomenon is a huge hindrance to an employee realizing their full potential. That habit affects productivity, it affects communication, it affects confidence, decision making, and problem solving skills, and all of which are fundamental for the sustainable prosperity of both the employee, the workforce, and the business. Then there is communicate proactively and regularly. I've said this before, and it never gets old. Effective communication is the bedrock of a strong organization. Without a clear acknowledgement of the tasks and accomplishments of the members, managing becomes an uphill battle. And consequently, the most coveted attribute from employees is the ingrained habit of proactive communication and regular reporting. Another nugget is actively networking. I think one of the most powerful things that has affected people's career is being in a constant state of networking. And I wish that more employees would engage the free networking tools at their disposal in a more consistent way. The social media platforms requires consistency to have an impact. You should join brainstorming sessions, and I believe consistency, persistence, and accountability are table stakes. What I love to see more is weekly or monthly creativity session with a team, and this is where you think and discuss new ways of engaging the prospects, partners, customers. These ideas are written down and discussed among the team, and the suggestion that the team will make to perfect the idea could be gold. Um, Collect valuable market intel. We should collect market intel about the competition. It becomes critical and is a strategic aspect of any business growth. As business development personnel, you need to stay ahead of the competition. Information and data and the new gold. Work on big projects consistently. Always have a few moon shots that are in process. Oftentimes, sellers get caught up in the day to day and lose focus on the big time deals that truly move the needle. And the biggest deals do not just magically appear. It's more important that we put in consistent time and effort every week. Even if it feels like the light at the end of the tunnel is so far away, the big deals take consistent effort, according to Jean-Marc Chanuin of Templafy. Over to you, Gary.
All right, thanks for those share, Frank. You mentioned something that I think is important, and I think those are habits to stay away from, which is the imposter syndrome. And you're right. Very often when we analyze persons who may be in that frame of mind of the imposter syndrome, is largely because they may not have a strong mentor, a strong coach, a strong supportive community on their side that is really helping them to craft their own voice in the ecosystem of communication, in the ecosystem of leadership. So I think that's a very important point that you would have made. And that ties back to another point that you would have made, which is networking. When I hear networking, what lights up in my head is collaborative learning. I think that's one of the essential takeaway that you can get from networking. It's collaborative learning, where each one teach one. You know, everyone at the table, they have value, that the community value, and each is able to learn and grow from that process and assert their own individuality. I think the whole concept of leadership, essential leadership habit, at the end of the day, you don't want to be a knockoff. You want to be the premium you. And that's the whole essence of leadership. So I love the points that you would have made there. Frank, Shivani, all to you.
Thanks, Gary. Now, we're speaking about servant leadership as a trait that we need to develop, some of us, a practice that we need to learn. I see the importance of servant leadership all the time in my teams, right? In my organizations, even if I'm not doing it in terms of a scrum way or an agile way, you can still use certain elements of servant leadership. What I really appreciate about servant leadership is that you can cultivate, it teaches you to cultivate growth. And I have so many examples of that I have seen. When we don't do that, what is the end result for the product that we are running, for the product that we are producing? You've got no value. So cultivating growth is a major thing in servant leadership. It's essential. As a servant leader, You need to focus more on the personal and the professional development of each individual on the team for learning and advancement. I love to say it's a learning and development culture that must be promoted, that will allow people to grow, it will allow people to develop. Servant leadership preaches this, preaches a L&D culture that you need to grow people. You mentioned in terms of as a project manager, you are always thinking ahead. Now, how could you think ahead and how could you get people to really think, to be more forward thinking, that, you don't wait for something to go wrong and then you ball crisis. You have to be more proactive. I mean, that's what project management is all about, to be more preventative. But in order for you to be like that, you need to, these people need around you to have that type of culture. And you could only do it by you as a servant leader cultivating growth in them. Because if you have skills and you are more confident in your ability, you definitely will contribute to the entire project or the organization in terms of looking ahead. So a growth mind, cultivating that we learning and development for your team, for your people, will allow you to really think ahead. It's a major concept, and we need to get that really, really better. As I keep hearing that people are saying that we are in this L&D space, but I'm not seeing it really materializing in all organizations. We love to talk, but we don't action it out. So servant leadership, it's a concept, a habit to develop, yes, over time. And it teaches you one of the major things, which is L&D, learning and development. And it's a culture to promote. You need to grow people. You need to look at the different skills to actually develop them. And I speak about it from a perspective of, in projects, you may not have the academia, the paper to do it, as we say, but you could work alongside somebody, peer-to-peer learning, where you could develop that, you could develop it. So this is growth. This is what servant leadership will teach us. Thanks, Gary.
All right. Thanks for that share, Shivani, and I love that you would have expanded on the significant role that project management plays in helping the leader to learn, apply, and master the tools of thinking ahead. And I do believe it's a very essential body of knowledge for one to have when you're attempting to manage any project. When I come back, I will talk a little bit about CME problems, because one of the things that we see is that very often as you start to think about what is it that you want to accomplish, which is part of the process of thinking ahead, very often you get stuck in the problem zone. You need human resources, how to get human resources. You need access to market, how to get access to market. You need access to capital, how to get access to capital. Very often, as you think ahead of the things that you need, your mind is not trained as to how to get it. So you become stuck in that problem zone.
Yeah.
So I'll talk briefly about that when I come back. But I want to turn now to Peter to have his thoughts on the concepts that is being shared here and today. All to you, Peter.
Yeah, Gary. What we want to also expand to the community is, what is human growth built upon? And Shivani was talking a while about peer-to-peer learning. And peer-to-peer learning, the first set of peers that we do learn from as we are growing up is from family. Those individuals, who have, say, an extended family. We usually, it's kind of things has changed in our modern culture, but where we were coming from, you learn from your cousins, on the playground. You learn from, forming friendships in but even that learning, going deeper, where did that learning come from? It comes from parents. But where did the learning that parents come from? Where is the very core platform from which learning comes from. Learning comes from books. The first person who learned something had to document it, right? And by documenting, so we have this concept that we use even from scripture, that we look at the life of Jesus, and Jesus was the fulfillment of scripture. So there's a scripture in Hebrews that says, "Lo, I come from the volume of a book. It was written of me." How did Jesus, as much as he is God in a human form, but even God in a human form had to depend on a book for him to develop his character, for him to identify with who he is. He came like a blank canvas, just like anybody else. So, in our master plan technique, we empower individuals to understand the power of a book. So, don't just depend on somebody else's story. No matter what you're talking about, even the books that comes out of academia, even the technical researches that are done and put in books that are instructional, it is still somebody's story. It is still somebody's perspective of how life works, true or not, and they package it into a book, and you go to the store, you purchase these quote unquote textbooks that we use to formulate the way how we see the world, the way how we develop techniques or master plan techniques that develop whatever practices or careers that we use to build the world around us. So we are saying to individuals, in your master plan technique, write your book, author your story. Now, to break that down even to a habitual, as we're dealing with habits right now, Gary, what we want individuals to understand about the things that we do repeatedly and why habits are so paramount. Because it is the things that we do repeatedly that forms habits, right? You do the thing one time, it's nothing. You do it twice, you do it thrice, you do it repeatedly. After a while, that thing becomes an habit. And what do they say about habits? After a while, you keep on making a habit habitual, it forms your character. You become known by that particular habit. And when you are known by a particular habit, what that character now form is your legacy. It now becomes a thing that future generations will remember you by. So we have to become intentional, because at the end of the day, we are etching, we're carving the memory of ourselves in people's mind, that future generations, they will be talking, everybody will be talking about us after we are gone. So what we're saying in our master plan technique is that be intentional about it. Don't just leave it to somebody to write about you when you're not here. Be intentional about what your story is. So let us just give a brief description breakdown of how somebody can write your story. And so we develop a document that we call 50 questions that will transform your life. So we use these 50 questions to help individuals, first of all, look at your upbringing. Look at your upbringing and your backstory, because every great story, if we should look even in the world of theater or in the world of movie production, I one of my two of my favorite movies My number one movie of all times is Matrix number one. Matrix number one. And my second story or movie that I like is the Iron Man, the first Iron Man's story. How this gentleman, in his backstory, why does Iron Man is so loved? We see this person in this steel suit, but the only reason why we love this person in the steel suit, it is because the character was locked away, trapped in a cave. His life was in danger. He was about to lose his life, and he decided that I have to get out of this, which goes back to what we're saying. You have to create your hero. You have to, and a lot of times you have to become a hero to yourself. Leadership, and we were talking about leadership now. The first leader that you have to become a leader to yourself. And that is laid out in your backstory. So your backstory, develop your backstory, go back. So the fifth question, if you want to be this individual that the world sees, who they see today is in comparison to where you're coming from. What are your upbringing? What were your family relationships? You're writing your story now, because you're also, leadership is also to develop or to define who you are. And a lot of people, Gary, Shivani, Frank, a lot of people don't know who they are. They did not take the time out to decide who they are and who they're becoming, but to define who you are and who you are becoming, where say, go back into your past, go back into your childhood, go back into your upbringing, and just write it out. Just describe where you're coming from, your family relate. So here are 6 things that you can use to define your character. You can look at your upbringing, look at your family relationships, look at your friendships. Here is a good place, another good place for people to look at. Look at your adversaries, those situations, those conditions that you had to overcome, the challenges when you were in those school, the challenges, death of a mother, the death of a father, being bullied, the adversaries, things that you had, as I said, you had to become your own hero to overcome those challenges. Number 5, and this is another important one. What is the ghosts that you had to deal with? And when we say ghosts, what are the those devastating experiences that itch itself in your experiences that cause you to be afraid? And whenever certain things happen in your life, you remember, it takes you back to that circumstance in your childhood, in your past, that brings up those bad memories, those ghost-like memories, those haunting conditions. Because you have to overcome those haunting experiences if you are going to become that hero that is going to really impact those who are depending on you. And lastly, so let me just say, count it down again: your upbringing, family relationships, friendships, adversaries, your ghost-like experiences. The final one that we could deal with right now, what is the lie that you had to deal with? The philosophy that you had received, that body of information that you had believed, only to realize that this body of information, this philosophy, is not really working for you at all. And there are so many that we have believed. Our modern world, one, as we are in a discussion, we were talking about, we're empowering people where business is concerned. One of the biggest lies that our world has, accepted was that you should go to school, get a good education, And then at the end of having a good education, you will be successful. You get a good job. You have a good environment. And that's one of the biggest lies. And it's becoming more and more apparent today. What is those bodies of information, the big lie, that flawed philosophy that shaped your character up to a particular point, and now you have to, as Shivane often say, you have to learn and then unlearn and then relearn again. And when we're able to tap into that, yeah, you'll come out now. You're Superman and you're Superwoman to somebody because you have paid your dues. You have paid your dues. You know what you are talking about. You are now developing mastery, and that is or we love talk about your master planning, because everything that I'm mentioning here, it is lo I come in the volume of a book. It is written of me, I delight to do thy will, O God, because we're going out and somebody's going to remember us. We have to stand one day and give account for how we have lived. Even if you do not believe in the afterlife, your deathbed, you will have to make a statement. On your deathbed, we will be making a statement, and we want to be able to make that statement when your family and friends gather around us. We want to be able to make that statement that they will, our last departing words ought to be legendary. It ought to be impactful. It ought to be a legacy that people will continue to talk about us in a way by which life will remember us.
All right, thanks for that share, Peter. Frank and Shivani, when a theologist decide to pelt some blows and share some licks, you know.
You listen. Yeah.
Thanks for the share, Peter. Great share. Love some of the points you would have shared. All right, I want to look now at another habit that I believe is essential for leadership, and that's the habit of seeing beyond problems. Every so often, you're trapped in the problem zone, perhaps taking what Peter White might have said. You have been taught to go to school, get a good education, get a good job, and all will be set. 10, 15, 20 years down, you recognize that that's not the whole story. And for many persons, you are trapped in that zone, and you don't know how to escape that zone because you have been socialized into thinking this way throughout your academic studies and into your adult life. And how do you escape this? So I'm going to tell you how to escape this. Not only this, but the other example might be that you start a business and you want to take that business in national, regional, and international, but you have never done this before. So you just don't know how to do this. So for many persons, you're stuck with a wish. You're stuck with something that you want to accomplish, and you just don't know how to accomplish it. Well, how do you bring yourself to train the mind to see beyond the problems? One of the great things that you can do is to become a subject expert. Become a subject expert. Perhaps there are still a lot of studies out there that you can take that will really help you to understand your area of studies and to possibly become an expert. So that's one option. As a subject matter expert, you understand the tenets of project management and how to navigate project management to achieve a specific end result. As a subject matter expert, as a leader, you understand how to deploy essential leadership tools to achieve predictable outcome. So one of the things that you owe to yourself to do when you want to rise above the challenge is to become an expert. And I just wish that everyone can really commit to this, because this is a commitment to you. This is a commitment to self. Every year we see at the beginning of the year or at the end of the year, persons develop their New Year resolutions. But guess what? The reason you're failing is because the reason you're not getting out of that problem zone is because you have not committed to become a subject expert. It's self-commitment. Perhaps that's one of the first thing that you need to do. Make yourself your number one priority. The second thing that you can look at is ensure that you are research oriented. You need to do research. If you're stuck in a zone that you're uncomfortable in, how do you use data to get out of that problem zone? I used some of it early on. You are starting a business, but you need the right human resources. What does the right human resources represent? You start in a business, you need access to capital, not just any capital, the right capital. You can research these things to get the right information. All right. So the next concept that I want to share, the next habit that you need to form is to be solution driven. There are many persons who know what they want to achieve, but then very often you see the problem and you get stuck in the problem. You get stuck with the problem and in the problem zone. You want to train the mind to be solution driven. So, regardless of the circumstances, and this is why I love project management, because regardless of the circumstances, project management gives you the tools to see beyond the problems. And let's take for one example. You set a project to finish at this particular time, but something went wrong and you can't finish the project on time if you maintain your WBS, your work breakdown structure. Project management is going to bring in a tool to say, okay, because of this, this is what happened. The project is going to be, the life cycle of the project will be extended by a week. But you can afford to extend the project life cycle by a week because it's going to cost you more. And you have a contractual obligation to finish the project on time because you have to open up, the owner of the project has to open up to the public. And they have millions of dollars coming in that project. And if you upset that, you have an obligation to refund the whole process. And some projects can be like that. But how do you train the mind to see beyond the problem? In project management, you have a concept that we call configuration management. It's a tool. So when you're going off course, when you're going over time and running out, going up that, configuration management is one of those tools that you can use to pull the project back on track. And just let me give a clear example. You're doing a building and you're off your deadline by a week. What can you do? You're doing a single shift. Is it possible to do double shift? Is it possible to do triple shift? Yes, you can. And those are solutions that you're looking at to the challenge that you're dealing with. And you see, it's important to expose yourself to the right training. It's not that academic is all wrong, but academic must make sense, not just in the project execution and the project benefits, but is it making financial sense to you who have these academics? Are you able to live the quality of life that you need to live to impact the family and the people around you? Make academic make sense. So we're not going to sit here and say that everything about academic is bad. They're good tools. But the tools, beyond the tools, it must make personal sense to you. So those are just some solutions that we are looking at, how to see beyond the problems, train the mind to not see the problem in the context of just a problem, is to see the problem and the solution. And let me put it this way. One of the smartest ways to position yourself to make wealth. Frank, tell me if you agree or disagree. Shavani, is to embrace all the problems and be the one providing the solutions. All right. So when you have that solution driven mindset, you don't run from the problem, you embrace the problem. And most people, they run from the problem, and that's why you're stuck in the problem zone. The possibility exists that when you learn to embrace the problem and grow through that pain, you come out on the other side as an expert as to how to navigate that. That could be packaged, Peter word, package and up level into something of income producing. So I'm going to pause here in the interest of time and respecting my colleagues, and I'm going to ask, I think it's Frank time now, to share on the subject, and then we're going to start to wrap up here. Time moves so fast when you're having fun.
I know.
Frank, all to you, my friend.
All right. So to just wrap up at the same time because I'm running for a meeting,
Yeah.
I'll just give you two last of the nuggets or essential habits. Um, you need to develop a business development mindset. Develop a business development mindset. No, I really wish that everyone had a business development mindset. What I'm saying that everyone envision themselves as part of the sales team to market and sell products and services. And you don't expect them to get the deal signed, but you expect them to be war dogs, where they're keeping their eyes and ears open for opportunities and then share that information internally so it can become capture business. And then you acquire the trait of discipline. A lot of persons in position lack discipline. But as a business development leader, one great habit I wish employees would develop is discipline. Discipline enables individuals to stay focused, to maintain consistency and follow through on their commitments. It fosters a strong work ethic. It ensures timely execution and contributes to the overall success in achieving our mission. Um, the question can be asked, therefore, do you have what it takes to be a great leader? And it will help if you excel at communicating. And of course, you need to be adept at planning and problem solving and delegating. You also need to be capable of navigating any and all challenges that arise. I think, Gary, you alluded to this when you say that when the pain comes, you go through the pain. And I look at so many, um, especially young ladies, and now I'm seeing guys, they want to make themselves look better. And they go through that physical pain of tattooing and piercings. But what business needs is not the physical pain, it's a mental pain, which is far greater than the physical pain. So if you go beyond those skills of excelling at communicating and delegating, and though the qualities that set great leaders apart are more elusive and can at times appear otherworldly, exceptional leaders possess a certain X factor that makes it seem as though they inherently know what to do. According to Harvard Business School professor Linda Hill, who's one of the world's top experts in leadership, he says star leaders aren't born with superhuman capabilities. Rather, they tend to have intentionally put themselves in situations where they have to learn, where they have to adapt and grow. Which is a crucible for developing the tenacity and fortitude to motivate and guide. And she quotes that leadership is a process of self development. No one can teach you how to lead. You need to be willing. You need to be able to learn how to lead. And mostly, we learn from our experiences and facing adversity. Stepping outside the spaces where we feel safe is a powerful teacher. Thank you, Gary.
Before you move, Paul, come on, Frank.
You're missing Paul? I can understand that.
Good, Frank. Peter Shavani. You hear Frank. You hear how Frank started his last presentation. He wished that people can develop a business development
Yes, I
mindset.
listened to that. I listened carefully.
I take note of it.
Very
What
good.
it is telling me, what it is telling me is that Frank has bigger corporate aspiration.
Oh
Frank,
yes, yeah. Yes, definitely, definitely. I am striving for that, for that,
because
for that. I am talking about billionaire status. I'm talking about multi-billionaire status.
I hear you, Frank, because when I interpret this statement, people developing a business development mindset, it means that you come into the organization all mentally prepared to
Prepared,
develop that business.
you
A
know.
business development mindset.
That
That's
is
what
true.
every corporate leaders want to hear. So I
That
love
is
it,
true.
Frank. I love it, Frank. So when you start to get those massive, trickle down effect of billions, me and Peter Shavani is going to be here, right?
No problem, because you guys got to show me some ideas, especially Shivani with your project management, because I got some projects on stream that I gotta get you on as one of the executives, Shivani.
Just call me up. I'm here.
Oh my God. All right, guys, I
All
love it.
right.
Frank, you
Yes.
made one other statement which I like, and what I take away is mental muscle. I think most people train the physiology, and I think that we need to have a lot of training around developing the mental muscle, the mental
Muscles, yes.
fitness. So I love what you said there. Also,
Yeah.
Shivani, all to you. Your closing thoughts.
Thanks, Gary. So, closing thoughts on servant leadership. It is a habit to build. A lot of persons, as we started to say at the beginning of the talk, you need to develop it. Remember, you could learn something, but you could only get better at it with practice. You can't develop it as a habit without practice. And that's why I also preach it's how do you move somebody from theoretical to more practicals. And there are different ways to do it. So one of the key takeaways that I hope people are leaving with this servant leadership is to practice the art of listening well, because that's what servant leadership is about. You have to listen to people, to your team, to understand whatever is the challenge that you're facing in order to problem solve it, in order to find the better solution, in order to think ahead. As you were saying, you need to listen. um, I myself, I'm talking that talk, and I'm hearing someone telling me in part of my team, it was a simple thing to solve a key, and she told me that I wasn't listening. I really wasn't hearing her. So I listened to what she said, that I wasn't listening, and I had to you know change up a little bit. So listen first, and this is a skill also that managers need to develop more of, in terms of to admit when you didn't do it correctly, and take the advice from people and go again. Right? Even you might say that this is a junior person to you, and you say no, la, la, la. But no, you have to listen. So there are many different parts of servant leadership to make you good at it, to make you develop it through practice. But I'll close here for now, and we'll come back at another point. The first one, not the first, is the key takeaway is listen first. Listen and come back again and listen again. I myself, that is something that I have to do a lot of. I will listen, I'll hear you, but I have to come back and listen again. So I know that is something that I have to do. That's my personal way of how I'll develop servant leadership. I'm not listening once. I might ask you again, and you might get fed up on me, but I'll ask you again, and then I'll listen again to what you said. That's just me. So I admit that I can't just listen first and then just go ahead, depending on what the problem is. Thanks, Gary, and always welcome. Good here.
But I want to thank you, Shivani, for being authentic and for being honest and to being open in terms of listening, the importance of listening skills for a leader. Because you find sometimes as leaders, we tend not to listen because we're fixing our ways and we're all about, imposing our way of thinking on the environment. So I really love that honesty. Sometimes listening has so much of positive outcome from it. Great share. Peter, your closing thoughts?
Yeah, Gary. So, what we want individuals to even to take away today from building or adding value to their human experience. We're all here on a day by day basis. We're all making contribution to human growth and mastering the experiences that we mastering our contribution to the experience that we all share with the marketplace or even in our homes, in our families. And as we're saying that there has to be a level of intentionality that individuals have to put forward in what they do on a day by day basis, because it is what we do on the day by day basis, those habitual things that we do on a day by day basis that, as we say, is forming our character and eventually is going to form our legacy. But there's one more thing that actually there's two more components as we're crafting the story, right? Because we are being intentional about crafting the story. So we talk about your introduction, and how you introduce yourself to life, and being intentional about your introduction in the roles that you play, right? You want to build your character. And when we talk about introductions, we're talking about the roles that you am at this, whatever falls behind I am. Those are your characters, the various roles, your characters, and we all in the story of our lives, we all play different characters. We're different kinds of heroes. So you have to be intentional about your introduction, first impressions. Whenever you go somewhere for the first time, you have to be intentional of that role that you are playing and how you're going to introduce yourself to that person, because at all times we want to present ourselves as that hero. So there is planning, a great deal of planning that goes into these elements, and then you're gonna build the backstories, and all of this is intentional. It requires a great deal of, yes, master planning. But here is where we want to go a little bit deeper, in that you now have to get psychological, because the intention is that you're going to have an impact on your audience on a day by day basis. So to become psychological is that you're going to look at your backstory, and the intention is to form an emotional bond. You got to form an emotional bond. You have to create such an impact about yourself that even when you spend 3 seconds with somebody in an elevator, and this is where people talk about your elevator pitch, but there's a lot of intentionality. You're meeting, even if you say nothing, there you are communicating a certain value. Even your silence, when you're intentional about who you are and what you're doing, even your silence can emanate a flare that somebody is looking at you, and you are communicating to such a degree that
Interesting.
that 3 second is memorable. You're constantly have to be memorable, and there's an intention about it. And this is why we're talking about master planning, because all of this has to be mastered. It has to be intentional. You have to know, because you want to dig deep, you want to brand, and we're talking about leadership, right? You want to stamp, you're constantly stamping your mark in people's mind about your character, about who you are, because you are building your legacy. You want to tap into people's wants. And how do you become psychological? You want to tap into people's wants. Because you're the hero, you want to tap into their needs. You want to tap into their fears. You want to be the person that you are saying, I am the individual that is going to bring appeasement to your fears. You want to tap into flaws. And all of this, where leadership is concerned, when you're able to do this because you have learned how to tap into, as we said before, when you learn to become your own hero first, you're able to now identify with other humans, with the people around you, because you have faced your fears, you have faced your flaws, you have satisfied your needs to some degree, your wants to some degree, you have developed your value systems, you have gone through the crisis and developed the disciplines to deal with the crises of your own life. So you are now qualified to deal with the crisis in other people's lives. So you know how to empathize. You know how to see other persons and to develop that emotional bond with individuals, getting psychological where you are memorable. And then the last thing that I would have said, we can come back to another time, is how you're going to bring that wall, that character to life. And this is where now you're building your story. If we're talking about the movies, this is where the hero goes into the fights, the climax of how you're going to, and the climax is a everyday and everyday. But anyhow, what we're saying here, Gary, is just to be intentional and build those habits around these segments. And on a day by day basis, you just do the same thing over and over again, just over and over again, and you will impact your community.
All right. Thanks for the share, Peter. What I want to look at in starting this program, we examine some of the importance of leadership. In conclusion, I want to say a couple of things. Whether you are deploying leadership in business or in your personal life, I do believe that there is a right and wrong way to deploy yourself. There is a right and wrong way, and it's important that you know this. The reason most people struggle to attain success in business and in life is because the deployment may have some challenges. And this is one of the reasons why we have developed a program that we call the Science of Success. Because the Science of Success, what it does, it looks at historical data, it looks at current market realities, it looks at possibly predicting future trends, and building out a system that can help to fast track a process of development. What the Science of Success really does, it helps you to see things in terms of science. It helps you to see things in terms of the theory, and it helps you to see things in terms of the practice. Because very often what we do, we learn things based on theory, but very often we don't have the scientific proof of when you deploy theory in a particular way, these are going to be predictable outcome. That's because you're learning in theory, and in most cases, you're flowing in theory. And I do believe that all theory must come alongside practice, because very often when you move from the theory to the practice, you find that the theory has to change. One of the examples is what was used early on. It's going to school, getting the good education, getting the job, enough to position you for financial independence. So you can do more for yourself and you can do more for your loved ones. What does the science says about that? So, as educated people, as academic, as leaders, you want to always be certain that you're in a position of strength to make better, smarter decisions, better business decisions or life decisions. And what the science of success will do is to bring the evidence to you of what is facts, what is fiction, and what is the alternative approach. We're currently looking at the Science of Success University, where all of these programs will be introduced to the general public. So I want to encourage you, the listening audience, to keep listening because there's so much more to come as it relates to positioning you for greatness, whether in business. If you want to be successful in business, what does the science say? Are you applying the best theory, or are you learning the best theory, and are you deploying the best practices to position yourself for success in business? The science of success looks at all of this so as to ensure that you have the information that is helping you to make informed and educated and the smartest decision when it comes to positioning yourself for success. So, with that being said, I want to thank the audience. Today we are reaching over 50,000. Sorry, today we are reaching over 50 countries, and we are reaching over 100,000 persons with our platforms. Today we had over 35,000 persons who would have subscribed to this platform. I want to thank you for supporting this platform. If you're in business and you find the content interesting, I want to encourage you to like, subscribe, and share. It's free. So you will be the first to get these content that we're bringing to you on a regular basis. I'm still seeing that we have over 70% of those who are looking at the program who have not yet subscribed. I want to remind you, just press that subscription button so you will be the first to get these content that we're bringing to you regularly. I want to thank my team. I know Frankie had to run to a meeting, but I want to thank my team, Frank, for always showing up and bringing value. I want to thank Peter for always showing up and helping us to see things from a theological standpoint, and which is vital. It's always important to have different perspectives on leadership. We call it collaborative learning. I want to thank Shivani for always showing up and helping us to learn a little bit more about project management and the significant role that project management plays throughout the business ecosystem, because everything can be viewed as a project, whether it's HR, whether it's public relation, whether it's finance, everything can be viewed from a project management perspective. So I want to thank all of you for being here today and making such a healthy contribution to today's topic, essential leadership habits. With that being said, I want to say, thank God it's Monday. We get to go out there and toil and make some more money, right? All right, guys, you have a great week ahead. And looking forward to do this again tomorrow and during this week.